From privilege to prison, he was a Cat A prisoner.
Anybody who comes out of the care system as a child, anything can happen. I used to do quite a bit at Stearns. People used to travel from all over the UK to go to that club.
How did you get it in?
Not sure I can say. I was given the knowledge about repressing when no one else had it. One of my co-defendants had been slipped into by a couple of undercover National Crime Squad.
Is it called entrapment?
So I got led to water and I drank. I pleaded guilty to conspiracy, supply, Class A, possession of various firearms. And I thought, I'm not having that, so if you come through my door, I will shoot you. Was she setting me up for you to rob me? And he said, yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad for you and for me that you didn't do that. People that had never had a parking ticket in their life were raided just because they knew me. One of the guys ended up with a big biro stuck right in his thigh. This is my story. I wouldn't advise it. Take from that what you will.
Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast, and this episode is proudly brought to you by Betovo. Before we get stuck into this week's episode, we're going to give a big shout out to our sponsors. You're probably wondering how the Podfather brings you the best true crime podcast every week without fail, with great energy. Well, here's the thing. To bring that energy, I have to feel my best and be at my best. And that's where Hype energy drinks come in with their powerful blend of vitamins, taurine and caffeine. Hype energy gives me that extra edge to stay sharp and focused in every interview. It's not just about the buzz. It's about clarity, alertness and bringing my A game to every conversation. Now, Hype energy isn't your average fuel. We're talking flavours like explosive cherry, red berry buzz, and even mojito, mint and lime. No weird aftertaste, just bold and refreshing flavour. No wonder they've won an award for taste, right? And if you're all about the zero sugar life, make sure you check out the watermelon and cheesecake flavours. All the flavour with none of the guilt. Yeah, I know, cheesecake in a can sounds mad, right? But trust me, it'll blow your mind. Now, the marketing team at Hype Energy keep telling me that MFP stands for more friggin' power. Now, I've told them it's not about that, it's about more friggin' Podfather. Know what I mean? And lucky for you lot, if you want to try it out, go to the checkout and type in Podfather in the offer code and get 20% off. Not only that, if you use this exclusive code, you'll be entered into a competition prize draw where you'll be in with a chance to win a Hype goodie bag signed by yours truly. And 5 lucky winners will get a 3-month supply of Hype. So let's get into it. The Podfather is officially powered by Hype Energy Drinks, because when you feel your best, you rate your best. Introducing a proper raw men's fashion brand that has untamed energy inspired by relentless warriors while remaining cheeky and rebellious. Simeon Saboteur is not just about style. This brand is a movement and a rebellion against the ordinary. This clothing is crafted for those that face life head on. Our new collection fuses classic design with modern edge. If you want to express your true warrior identity, strength and boldness, then join our tribe of real modern men. Explore our collection of casual wear, active gear and statement pieces that are as unique as you are. Our new collection is now live, and as a special treat for our Criminal Connection podcast crew, use this fantastic discount code BANANA5 on the checkout for an exclusive 5% discount off your first order. Visit www.simeonsaboteur.com. Check them out in the link below. Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast. My name's Terry Stone, aka the Podfather. Today we've got a great guest. He's just written a book and it's out now. It's called 9 Million From Privilege to Prison. He was a Cat A prisoner. He's done 2 17-year prison sentences and he is from my manor. Please put your hands together for Mr. Piers Ravenhill. Woohoo!
Thank you, Terry. Nice to see you.
Do you know what? I just got to shake your hand. I actually, it just made me laugh when we sat down, because obviously we've never had the pleasure of meeting,
no.
And it made me laugh how small the world was.
Yeah, it really is. We have a few mutuals, don't we? So.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. So for anybody that's watching this or listening to this that doesn't know about your life, you know, I'd say you're probably one of the only people that has come from a privileged family, that's gone to private school and then obviously gone down the wrong side of the street.
Yeah. I can only think of Darius Guppy as a comparative, and that didn't pan out very well for him, I don't think. So,
but that's good though, because there's only two of you, right?
Yeah.
So there's only two. But just what would be great for everybody watching this, Piers, is just really just to talk about, you know, where you grew up and a little bit about your childhood, really.
Yeah. Well, I was adopted at 9 months old, which I only actually found that out a couple of years ago. I've known I was adopted since I was about 6, but I was always told it was from birth. So that was news to me. But I was adopted by two working class Londoners who looked after me well, and I'm really grateful for that, because as we all know, anybody who comes out of the care system as a child, anything can happen.
Yeah.
So I was really, you know, I look back and I've lost both my parents quite a long time ago now, but I'm always grateful to them for saving me, if you like.
Yeah. And obviously, when you found out, like you said, recently, really, that you've been adopted, did you want to find out who your real parents were, or did you just think, well, actually, those people who brought me up were my real parents? You didn't want to sort of go down that road?
Well, like I said, I've actually known since I was about 6. My mum told me in a very kind of matter-of-fact way that has probably affected me in a negative way. But, I had no inclination at all to find out where I was really from until I was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy when I was 28, and they told me that it can be passed on. By this time I had a 4-year-old daughter.
Right.
I didn't go the conventional route, but I paid quite a lot of money at the time because I had it to spend, and I found out that my natural father was a Maori from New Zealand. My natural mother was an English girl from West London.
Right.
That's the extent. I actually just wanted to find out if there was any medical history with them. There wasn't.
Right.
And since that time, I haven't been inclined to dig any deeper. I'm 52 years old now. It's not really that important to me. Yeah. So I just kind of get on with my life, really.
Yeah. And when you, like you said, you were adopted by these working class parents. What did your adopted parents do?
Well, my dad was a car dealer originally. He left school early he would have left school in the 50s.
Right.
He trained to be a mechanic with Porsche, and very quickly he just went out on his own, and he actually is, even to me, even though I lived it, it's bizarre to me to know that my dad made a lot of money from 3-wheel cars, robbing Reliance.
Did he sell one to Del Boy?
Well, he might have. I remember he sold one to the British Olympic swimmer Sharon Davis.
Right.
When she was desperately trying to make it on the sort of swimming circuit, and she had no money, and she came and bought a little Reliant to run around in, bless her.
And do you know what's so funny? Like, I remember seeing them around, and like in the 70s, they were commonplace, right? And I actually went in one, and they were like fucking death traps.
They are lethal. I mean, they were made of fiberglass. They can roll, as Jeremy Clarkson proved years ago. I mean, at prep school, one of my teachers in particular used to take the piss out of my dad all the time. Not to his face, because my dad would have clumped him, but to me. And, you know, as I grew up, I realised, hang on a minute, mate, those cars are paying your fucking wages. So,
shut the fuck up.
You know, basically, yeah. But, you know, I was a kid then, and I just used to kind of let it.
Was he like an Arthur Daly character, your dad?
He was a bit, yeah, he was.
Because that was wasn't that a great show, Minder?
Yeah, well, we all love it, don't we? I've watched all of it so much that I barely can stand to see it anymore. But there's still, you know, you might watch an episode that you've seen 20 times, and there'll still be something in there that will make you laugh out loud. So, yeah. And my dad was known in the game as Three-Wheeler Bill. So,
he sounds like a movie character.
Yeah, he was a larger-than-life character as it goes. And I'm not just saying that because he was my dad, but he was successful, but he was always on the cusp of falling into the abyss in business, but we did okay and he did well.
But car dealers back in the 70s, they were wheelers and dealers,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And I realised from quite a young age that it wasn't something that I wanted to get into, because it seemed to me that what car dealers were doing then, they probably still have to now, is they're basically robbing people and pulling the wool over their eyes.
So when people come in, they'd be like, oh, God, it's a problem with the engine. That's going to cost you $3,000.
Exactly. All of that. But yeah, I mean, I saw and learned quite a bit from it. And I guess the biggest lesson was I'm not a car dealer. I don't want to sell cars because...
And how did you do when you was at school? I mean, was you academic or?
I was.
Was you a good boy?
I wasn't a good boy at all. Right. I was a mess from young, an angry child, isolated myself. I used to muck about a bit, and at school I was a massive source of frustration for them, because they could see that I was above average, but I didn't care. All I wanted to do was play sports all my life. My IQ is 149. I've got lots of academic qualifications. I've never used any of them. I didn't even collect my GCSE or A-level certificates. I just didn't bother. Obviously, I look back now and realise that was, I guess, the stupidity of youth, really. But yeah, I can do it, and when I want to, I do well, but I just never wanted to, really. So
and where you grew up, like you said, as a kid, whereabouts were you living?
Yeah, so my parents had a house on Wentworth Golf Course, and we lived there until I was 10. I went to Virginia Water Junior School and then on to Skatecliff Prep School in Inglefield Green. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful house, nice grounds. We had a swimming pool outside, and our back gate of our huge garden went straight onto the 15th green of the championship course. Back then, if you owned a house in Wentworth, you were automatically a member. I used to piss them off smashing golf balls around, and one time in particular, I took a massive divot out of the 18th green with a 7-iron, and the groundsman caught up with me a few weeks later and grilled me about it. I just denied it all. But yeah, it was I was very lucky to have that as a backdrop to my childhood. So,
and I mean, growing up in what people would say was a privileged upbringing. You've got this massive house on Wentworth.
Yeah,
you've got swimming pools. You're going to private school. You're probably drinking your tea with your little finger out.
Possibly.
But I mean, when would you say that the crime option became apparent, that you thought, actually, I don't want to go down that road, I want to go down this road?
I used to get myself in a bit of bother at prep school. I was a bit of a tea leaf there, and that stopped, thankfully, and I've never been a thief. But I guess we were living down in Hindhead in Surrey. I was about 16, 17. And I met a couple of new friends in this new place where I lived. And we used to have a bit of a drink and a game of pool in my dad's pub, because he just used to let us be upstairs out the way. And then we kind of just naturally fell into smoking a bit of hash, a bit of soap bar back then. And I got it into my head that I didn't want to pay for this privilege. So I decided not to, and I started buying larger but small amounts, and it just kind of escalated real quick from there. within a month or two of starting selling bits and bobs to my mates, I was travelling to Essex once a week to get a bar of soap. And
obviously we're talking about here. We're not talking about Dove.
So I used to get a bar, and I would literally cut it into eighths and sell the whole lot in eighths, make a nice drink. I was working at the time. I was actually a caravan salesman.
Right.
Which was good money. I'd been booted out of my house by that time by my parents. I was living with my girlfriend, and we were doing okay. I started selling, and it just went from there. Within a short time, I was then moving up to selling speed and acid, and again a quick sort of step towards doing coke and ease.
And was it what year was this?
I started selling hash in probably about 1988, something like that.
Wow! So you was right at the beginning of the rave scene. So
I was, yeah, and I cottoned onto that quite quickly. And by the time I was 18, I was running around nightclubs selling pills and had runners and bits and bobs. I used to do quite a bit at Stearns down in Worthing, which was like it was really well known. People used to travel from all over the UK to go to that club.
Did you know Mensa?
I did know Mensa. I used to look after him to make sure that I didn't get any heat from his security.
Right.
He liked a little bit of nosebag, and I just used to sort him out. And yeah, he was a nice enough guy.
Because that was my first ever rave at Stearns.
Really?
That was my first ever rave.
Well, it was a pretty good introduction. It was a good do down there. We used to like it. And I had a couple of runners. They'd be floating around doing the business, and I'd be getting off my nut with my friends, not really paying much attention to it all.
And this has always fascinated me as an ex-promoter. Because when I used to do events, we would have people walking through metal detectors. We'd have people taking their shoes off. They get like properly, like now they don't search properly, right? But they get grabbed up, like violated almost, right? To make sure they didn't have anything on them. Yeah. But we were more interested in weapons than drugs. But obviously we wanted to make sure that nobody was bringing anything in, drugs or weapons. But for you actually working on that, I've always wondered, how did you get it in?
I'm not sure I can say, but they actually...
It doesn't matter, it's in the past, isn't it?
But I don't know who's still doing all that stuff.
Right, okay.
I would say, you're looking at 25 plus years ago, things... I don't remember it being particularly hot at Stearns. Obviously, Mensa and the club were getting a lot of attention from Sussex police.
Of course, yeah.
They were trying to shut it down all the time.
If you got 3,000 people and they're all off their nut,
the
police are like, what
the fuck's going on?
Because Worthing's like quite a nice place, isn't it?
It is a nice place, yeah. So, and the house on the hill, it stood out a bit. And but in terms of getting stuff in and moving it about, basic pat-down searches, really. I mean, you could pretty much more or less get your people to just nuts 500 and walk in with it.
Right.
Obviously, they had a few people on their radar.
So they either put it down their pants or they didn't put it up any orifices?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, that's good. That's good.
And in terms of like weapons and stuff like that, it wasn't really like that back then.
Well, everyone was happy then, weren't they?
Yeah, I guess it kind of was, but we never had any ag there, not like that. Maybe a little fisticuffs here and there. But to be honest, we were more interested in just keeping a low profile and getting on with business. Because it's all about business.
And with somewhere like Stearns, there was like 3,000 people in there. So, and that was open a couple of nights a week, wasn't it? Fridays to Saturdays. Yeah. And if you was there both nights, what would you look at selling? Would it be a couple of thousand a night, or would it be more?
Yeah, a couple of thousand maybe. It just depended. Sometimes it was really lively in there, and sometimes it was a bit more sort of tranquil. But you'd be disappointed if you took 1,000 and went home with any.
Right, and to put this into context for any viewers or listeners that don't know about the ecstasy movement and the rave scene.
Yeah.
Back then, the E's were like 20, 25 quid.
20 quids, and obviously, depending who it was, you know, you'd sort of have a bit of a customer base, and you'd do a few deals here and there.
And what would you like if you was buying them wholesale? Did you get like a price for 1,000, a price for 10,000?
Back then, in the early days before I really kicked off, I'd probably be paying a price on maybe just 1,000 at a time. Right. To be honest, Terry, I didn't even haggle with people then because I knew what I was getting and I was happy with that.
And what was the markup on them?
You might on a good day you might sort of double your money, maybe a bit more. It depended. You know, the kind of the flow of goods was probably not as kind of predictable as it became later on, but because it was kind of early days with all that then. But and somebody I know got collared, and it sent a little bit of a ripple through things because it was an importation, and he got 10 years for that back in about 1990, which was a big sentence for that back then. Right. But,
what was that? Was that ecstasy or was that?
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure exactly the timing of the whole layer bets thing, but ecstasy was big news back then. And
I think that was 94, 95 around that.
I was going to say 95. So that hadn't happened, but obviously there was a lot of loud voices at that time. And I guess the judge who handed out 10 years for what was, you know, to me it wasn't a 10-year worthy kind of gig, but they were probably looking to make an example of certain people back then, you know, trying to tread on it, but it was, you know, they know as well as we do it's a fruitless task.
I thought the worst thing I ever saw, I don't know if you remember this, but Grange Hill, when they did that song, Just Say No.
Yeah.
And I think one of the guys who was singing it, he actually got caught being out of his face on drugs,
really?
So, later on. So, but it was, you know, for me, I think the whole thing, like when they did that Just Say No song, when they had, when Leah Betts obviously passed, and they had that picture of her in the hospital bed with all the tubes off of her, with Sorted, Nice One Sorted or something on top. And people were like, I don't think it had the desired effect because people were looking at that and going, oh, I want one of them. Do you know what I mean? Like making a joke out of it. And obviously somebody's daughter's died, do you know what I mean? And there was nothing funny about that. No. But people were, and I think the whole, you know, the scaremongering in the press, you know, don't take ecstasy because you'll die. And then, you know, at that time, everybody was taking it. I mean, I remember like literally going to that rave at Stearns, and it was like literally walking into an alternative universe because if you've gone to a nightclub, you know, it was sticky carpets, beers, you know, they'd play some slow records, you'd ask a girl if you'd have a dance. It was quite sort of like old school, but with a rave, it was sort of like everybody was having a good time. It was no trouble. No one was drinking. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was happy. And the girls would chat you up. And it was always a bit like, wow, you know, this is great. Because every time you went to a club, there was going to be someone to trip on you, spill a drink on you, what you're looking at, you chatted to my girl, do you know what I mean? So you'd always end up having a fight with somebody. But that's why I like the rave scene, because it was like just the vibe in there.
Yeah, it was a real game changer. Obviously, I remember the sort of early acid house type thing.
Right.
That was interesting, but the vibe was kind of the same. People weren't there for that.
Yeah.
They were just there to have a good time. Yeah, a lot of people would get off their nut, but generally it was relatively safe. I do know somebody else whose brother died at a do in Portsmouth around that time. He'd taken a lot of E's, and we were stupid. You know, we were kids then. In memory of him, the fact that he'd taken 10 E's at this club in Portsmouth and died, his brother, myself, a few of our friends, we went to Stearns the next week and we all did 10 pills that night. Just, you know, it's stupid, but we were kids and we were stupid.
Right.
I'm still stupid, but not in that way.
So instead of taking 10 E's now, you have 10 vitamin C's, yeah?
Yeah. Bit of Barocca. Yeah, I mean, I'm completely drug-free now. I smoke roll-ups, and I wish I didn't do that because for long periods of my life, I've never smoked. But yeah, in terms of everything else, I don't even see people who are involved in that. I don't. I think it might be an effect of my second sentence, but I'm even more reclusive now than I ever was. I don't go out. I don't mix with people much. It's just the way I am, and I make no real apologies for it, although it can probably seem a bit frustrating to my friends at times. But
And when you was going, like you said, at Stearns, and you had these dealers, runners, whatever you want to call them, working for you, did you like pay them commission, or did you just pay them a fixed fee for the night?
yeah, they'd get what they wanted out of it.
Did they say, I don't want any money to pay me an E's?
Yeah. I mean, I was happy to do whatever they wanted, because at the end of the day, they're putting themselves more on offer than I was, so they have to be looked after properly.
And I mean, and if you were doing 1,000 a night, I mean, that's 10 grand a night in one club.
Yeah, and
I mean, that's a lot of dough.
And funny thing, you talked about getting stuff in. It was probably more difficult getting stuff out, in terms of that's a lot of cash.
Right.
And we were always a little bit weary of people, just you never know what can happen. But also, usually I'd have been partying myself, and it kind of distorts your reality. I do remember one particular night, I got it in my head that all the money that I was being handed by my people was counterfeit, and I'd probably taken 2 or 3 pills by this time. You can't even see properly, and I'm holding up all this money. There's people everywhere. I've got piles of cash, and I'm looking, going fake, and it caused a bit of a scene, but actually it turned out that none of it was fake, and I was just off my nuts. So yeah.
And how many clubs? Because if that was the first one, how many other ones did you have?
I had guys who were kind of in and known in maybe 3 or 4 other clubs, kind of south of the River Thames in London. I very rarely went to those places myself. I would just send them on their way. They were happy. I was happy. I remember one club, I don't think it's there anymore, called Vader's, which a friend of mine was a doorman, which was useful. But yeah, the guys generally just used to say, this is where I'm going, can I have? So in a sense, they became more customers than workers.
Got it.
Things for me were evolving in different ways in the drugs game, and my attention was elsewhere quite quickly. I think after my dad died in 1991, that was late 91, I more or less steered myself away from clubs after that. I'm not a club person myself anyway. I don't like crowds, so that doesn't really help me. So yeah, I just kind of, it was a natural evolution to go to other things. And it was kind of, back then I think it was really speed, coke and hash and weed that kind of took a lot more of my attention.
What was your best seller?
My best seller of all time was probably repressed coke, because I was given the knowledge about repressing when no one else had it, and I was
share that with us, because I've never heard of that. So what is that?
So basically, you're taking large amounts of pure, like 90 plus purity coke, and back then I could, with a lot of customers, I could smash that into more than double.
Wow.
And they were paying good money for it. They were happy with their price, and it would mean that the money I made from, say, breaking up 10 kilos of coke and doing bars and half kilos here, there, would probably double, possibly more. So it was a big thing back then. And the guy who taught me how to do it I didn't know him. I was seeing a punter in Portsmouth, and this guy turned up, and my friend, my punter, said to me, "Give him 500 quid." So I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, that's on you. Here you go." He disappeared, the bloke. We didn't hear a thing for hours, and then he suddenly turned up with a press. He showed me how to do it. I took it with me, put it in one of my lockups. I wasted thousands of pounds trying to master the technique.
Right.
And when I did, then, yeah, it was a real game changer, and I made a lot of money from doing that.
When you say press, is it like a blender?
It's basically a pressing machine. I think they're used generally in the car trade for things like bearings and stuff like that.
Right.
And it will just apply a massive amount of pressure and make powder back into block, which is what Coke customers...
So you get the Coke.
Yeah.
You then, what would you mix it with?
We would smash that into powder, and this at times this was on an industrial scale, so I wasn't doing it. I had people doing that for me. A little bit of losses here and there, you know, that's people's nature, but you would then mix various things. I didn't go very scientific with that because back then you didn't need to. It was very new. People didn't particularly care what was in it as long as it was not something that would cause them any health issues.
Because someone said to me that that there was a thing that the dentist used.
Yeah, so you could get benzocaine, lidocaine.
So there was that, and then people said that they would also mix it up with chalk. They'd also put rat poison in it, and I mean, it all sounds a bit fucking mad.
Well, that's just being an arsehole. Why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it always made me sort of think, like, why would you, like you said, why would you do that?
Yeah, I don't get it, because there's plenty of mediums you can chuck in. I used to use a lot of New Era, which was a homeopathic remedy you used to be able to buy from Holland and Barrett.
Right.
And I would send people out to Holland and Barrett's all over the southeast, literally buying boxes of this stuff. What did
it actually do?
In terms of...
Yeah, if you took it without mixing it, if you just had it as a what was it, like a health thing?
Yeah, they were just, I mean, there were all kinds of varieties of it. The truth is, I don't actually remember what they were for. I know what they were for in my world.
Right.
So
that's funny.
Yeah.
But I suppose you was helping people, really, because if they got fucked up on the drugs, then they had that sort of made them feel better afterwards.
Yeah. Two for the price of one.
Right, yeah. Was you selling it? You know, you won't have a hangover with this. You won't feel fucked up the next day. You'll wake up, you can go for a run, you'll be fine.
It's a funny thing, because actually at that time, a lot of people, and it still carried on when I was dealing again after my first release from prison back in 2011. There are a lot of people who don't want to sniff coke and be like that. They want to be able to do that, have a drink, talk to their friends, their people, have a good night and make it last.
Is that the judge? So if you took some really good coke, you're like that.
Well,
and if you don't take some good coke, you can have a conversation and a drink. And
I think when it's kind of diluted, then a lot of people were into that.
Right. Okay.
And I would be specifically asked, I don't want a key of, climbing the walls. I want a key of, relatively sensible night.
Right.
Okay, there you go.
Right.
And like I said, that was still kind of going on when I was back dealing 12 years ago. And
when you and obviously from your progression, from, like you said, you're selling a bit of puff, you start selling some ease, you're doing a few clubs, you're sort of expanding your sort of drugs empire.
Yeah.
Did anything come on top? I know you obviously ended up going to jail, but along the way, did somebody grass you up, or did you get pulled over at some points, or was you under surveillance?
There were one or two probably close shaves, but I don't think any of them were specific to me.
Right.
I really did my best to fly under the radar. I never hung about with people that I was working with, at the sort of higher end of the game. Never socialised with any of those people. Some of them didn't actually even know me, hadn't met me, but they knew I had I had a pretty decent name.
Right.
I never owed anyone a penny. I had capital, and bags full of money speak a lot to a lot of people.
Right.
So that was kind of my shtick in a sense. I was cash up for everything.
And was you dealing with people mainly UK based, or did you have anybody overseas that was?
I dealt with UK based people, but I also dealt with people in Europe, in Africa, in South America. So it was a bit of a mix. I wasn't really overly kind of drawn to importation. I just felt that there were too many potential pitfalls in that. It's not a direct from A to B, it's A to B to C to D. And each of those points is another possibility of losing all your money, or worse, being kind of tagged by the authorities. So yeah, I just did bits here, bits there, and it kind of worked okay for me.
Yeah. And how big did you get? I mean, was you?
I got to the point where I could get pretty much anything I wanted with time to pay. There were times when I don't like not paying. I like to pay up front, but there were a few times where I might have taken 100 keys of coke with time to pay, maybe a bit less. There was certainly a lot of 50s and bits and bobs like that.
I mean, 100 kilos of coke. What's the street value of that?
Oh, well, it depends who you ask, because if you get nicked with that now,
Right.
the street value of 100 kilos of coke is probably going to be put at, well, you're probably looking at the street value being put at about £100,000 a kilo.
Right.
Which is, obviously, anyone in the game knows that that's not realistic.
What is it? 20 something? 20?
I've got no idea what that would cost now, but I can say that back then in 2011, 12, 13, 14, prices were extremely high when I first left prison. Sometimes you were paying in the 40s for 1 kilo.
Wow.
I would think back then, 100 kilos on tick, you could be paying anything from sort of 25 onwards.
Wow.
Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. It depends who you were working with and how you'd worked with them before.
So if you build up a good enough reputation,
Yeah,
and obviously you always pay, then you're able to access drug dealers' interest-free credit facilities.
Yeah, because actually the grapevine is quite active, and it, my name was good, and if I spoke to somebody I was, getting large amounts from, and maybe they'd say, oh, this friend of mine has got this, and I might be interested, and they would just vouch for me straight away.
And how long would you have to pay that money back? Would it be like a month, or would it be like whenever you got it?
It depended on who it was. Some people are really relaxed about stuff like that, and others aren't. And what I tended to steer myself away from was people who would say, you've got a month, and then after a week they'd be driving you nuts on the phone, and I just can't deal with people like that. So I mostly lean towards people who they had enough money and enough business interests to not even think about their 100 kilos for a while. But me being me, I absolutely hate owing anyone a penny. The first thing I would do was get that bill paid. I'd rather not eat to pay that bill. And
if it went wrong, like say somebody dropped 100 kilos on you, and they said, "Oh yeah, pay us in a month," and then it got taken, either robbed by another firm or the police took it. I mean, what would happen? Would you have to then still pull it up, or would it end up with you sort of basically disappearing?
Well, how do you mean disappearing? Me doing a runner, or getting disappeared?
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever in a position where anyone would want to disappear me. Right. I think also my reputation, if I'd ever owed someone,
they knew you'd get it eventually.
Yeah, because I'm really funny about debt. I've never had a loan in my life. I don't have a credit card. I just don't like debt. It keeps me awake at night. So fortunately, I never found myself in that situation. Losses that I had enough money to cover those losses anyway. But at that stage, so
is that part of the business though? As a drug dealer, like if you've got 100 keys, you're going to lose a couple of keys or 10 keys.
Business, that's the nature of any business. You will never ever collect all the money you're owed. It's impossible. And occasionally things would go a little bit wrong. I've had a few losses back in the day, but the truth of it is I never really put myself in a situation where if it all went wrong, I'd be fucked, because I don't want to be fucked. And I didn't want to be. So I was really all about business, and I'm quite business minded. I'm financially pretty astute. I wouldn't put myself on offer in that way.
Do you have any funny stories around like either losing some stuff or just import? Yeah, when the drugs were turned up, have you ever?
Well, I don't know if it's funny, but there's a couple of things that were. There's a close shave. Right. I got pulled in my car with a couple of friends on board in West London, sort of Brentford area, and it was only a jam sandwich, but they pulled us over. They said to me that they'd looked at the car and the number plate and saw that I wasn't in my area where the car was registered. They just thought they'd say hello. And I spoke to them, everything was fine, and within sort of 10 minutes we were on our way. I had 200 kilos of soap bar in the boot, and thankfully they didn't think to have a little scan of the car. Wow. So that was a bit of a sort of increased blood pressure moment. And then
was you literally, as you're talking to him, thinking, "Don't look at the boot, don't look at the boot"?
Yeah, of course, but you can't. It's a real kind of game you're playing to try not to project anything visually or in your speech. So I was pretty good at that. I've had a few close calls like that, and I managed to, touch wood, I never came unstuck. I was in Dubai in 2002 with my then girlfriend. Had my work phone with me. She knew that, there were things that needed to happen even on holiday. We were staying at the Jumeirah Beach. We'd been at the Burj a few days before, and I had a phone call. I put the phone down and I switched it off, and she looked across and said, "You never switch that phone off." And I said, "Well, let's just say I'm having a break because I've just had the news that this holiday has gone from costing me 15 grand to about 100. Wow. Something's happened back home." And that was one of my sort of rare dipping my toe in the water of importation. And my investment had fallen over, so I'd lost about 85 grand.
Wow.
Shit happens, but
and when you delved into that, was it just because it was a lot more lucrative? There was more money to be made
in coke.
No, but as in the importation, like if you get involved in that side.
Yeah, there was really that particular thing was kind of me doing an associate a favour.
Right.
Back then, I don't know what it's like now, but transport, there was X amount of space, if you like, and that had to be filled. And until it was filled, nothing really was happening. So my friend called me up, said, "Look, I've got this bit of trolley, as they called it. Do you want to chuck on? We could do with a bit of extra." So I just said, "Yeah, okay. It's not really my thing, but go on. You're a mate. I'll help you out." And that's what happened.
Right.
But yeah, there must be more money in it, because otherwise people wouldn't.
Was that the first and the last time you did it, though?
No, I was involved in a few bits and bobs over the years. Certainly before my first time inside, there was actually a big thing happening when I got nicked, and I was one of the people doing that, organising it, benefiting from it. And one of the guys who was also involved in that, there were 4 of us, he knew I'd been nicked, and he was worried because he knew that if I rolled over, we were all probably looking at 30s.
Wow.
But I didn't. I'm not a grass. I'll take everything on the chin. So I can understand that he was a bit concerned because it's a big deal, but you know, as it happened, that bit of business was never even mentioned to me by National Crime Squad.
Right.
They did show me a photograph of one of the people involved, and I obviously no commented, and I was thinking, this doesn't look great, but nothing happened in terms of what we were doing. That I know for a fact. So
as you're going along, and when you actually did get arrested, what was that for?
Well, one of my co-defendants.
Was this the first time you got arrested? Or
yeah, the first time. Wow. This was the National Crime Squad operation,
right? And
it was a big deal. One of my co-defendants had been slipped into by a couple of undercover National Crime Squad, and they started paying cash for relatively small things. I remember they bought 5,000 E's one time. They were buying 9 ounces of coke here and there. At the time, kind of chump change to me, but my co-defendant essentially worked for me, and he wanted the stuff. So yeah, you get the stuff. It culminated in the undercover officers asking him if he knew someone who could do an exchange for them. They had 1/4 ton of hash coming their way. They didn't want it. They were looking to trade it for 200,000 E's, and that's where I was brought into it all. And eventually we were arrested by armed police in a warehouse near Woking, doing the exchange. Right. And that's where everything changed.
Wow.
That was the end of my first run at being a drug dealer.
And how long had you been doing it before you, up to that point? Was it sort of 5 years, 10 years?
Well, I was 30 when that happened, and I'd been full-time in crime for about 10 of the last 12 years. Wow. I had a little gardening leave from it for a while. I bought a straight business, and I can't say I got sucked back into drugs and crime. I volunteered to go back into it, so it was my fault.
But I mean, if you had 10 years of doing that, and I mean, that's a pretty good run, because people don't really ever, you know, they normally get caught pretty quick. So the fact that you had 10 years of a decade of, making money, selling drugs, committing crimes, and not having any problems. But then that was, are they allowed to do that? I mean, because they've sort of set you up, really, haven't they?
Well, we looked into this.
Is it called entrapment?
It is called entrapment, but the thing about British law is entrapment doesn't exist.
Right.
Where it does in America.
Right.
And we looked into this. I looked into it a lot when I was in Belmarsh. The upshot was that my then QC, Grace, who the last I heard of her was a judge. She came to see me in Belmarsh, and she said, look, the bottom line with all of that is it's kind of muddy waters, but the words she used were, the British law sees it as you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So I got led to water, and I drank, and I volunteered to drink. So the entrapment thing wasn't really, well, like I say, it doesn't actually technically exist under British law. It's a bit of a grey area, but so there was no hope of, I looked at any possible wriggle room in my case. I was absolutely banged to rights.
Right.
So very quickly for me, that first one, it just became a kind of damage limitation exercise. And I pleaded guilty to 11 of the 26 charges that were laid against me. They left the rest on file because they had the big kind of stuff to hit me with.
So what was the charges that? I mean, that's a long list.
Yeah, do you know what? I can't even really remember the ones that were left on file because it was 20 odd years ago. But essentially, I pleaded guilty to conspiracy supply Class A, about 2 or 3 counts of that. The same for Class B.
Right.
Possession of various firearms. And I was kind of lucky with that as well because the guns they found in my house were loaded and ready to go. Originally, I was provisionally charged with possession with intent to endanger life, which is a more serious charge. Eventually, on the final indictment, it was just possession of prohibited weapons. I was also originally charged with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and 1 or 2 other possession of counterfeit currency and handling stolen motor vehicles.
So you were right about that counterfeit money.
yeah, I kept it. Yeah.
And with the firearm stuff, was that mainly just for protection or?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't a person to go out and about, with a gun strapped to my waist. I did occasionally, but those were for very specific reasons, something that needed to happen, and it was all resolved without any shots being fired. But actually, at the time I was arrested in 2003, there was a little team of ex-military. I lived very close to Aldershot then. Yeah. And these ex-military, they had set themselves up in military style as robbing drug dealers, and they were quite successful, and they were hurting people, but they didn't care if it was a man or a woman in the house. They were after the drug dealer, but if his wife, girlfriend, even kids. And I thought, no, I'm not having that. So if you come through my door, I will shoot you. And luckily they didn't come through my door. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that position, but ultimately the guns were loaded for a reason. Right. You can't be in that situation and say, do you mind if I just put one in the chamber? Just wait. Of course it doesn't work like that. So
I think the problem with, because I remember hearing about that, because I used to do that club in Aldershot, Rhythm Station.
Okay, yeah.
So, and I know a lot of the guys, they were ex-parachute regiment on the door.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, obviously, Aldershot's home of the British Army.
Yeah.
But somebody did tell me that there was a group of, and I don't know if they were still in or whether they were out, but they were literally surveilling drug dealers and then just turning them over and nicking all their gear and their money. And I did think at the time, what a genius crime, because the drug dealers can't ring the police, right?
No.
Oh, someone's just stole my money and my drugs.
That's right.
So I thought, what a great thing. And obviously, because they're in the military, and obviously if they're in one of the more sort of specialised units, they know how to sort of get away. They know how to avoid the, capture.
And I'd heard the same thing. These guys were pretty lively, and they were doing good jobs on people, not just in that area. They were branching out, and they were successful. Obviously, there was a big difference between then and now, because drug dealers do get robbed by other criminals quite a lot now. So I
think they got inspired by the military boys.
Maybe, maybe. But I guess if you look at it, there's a sort of inevitability about that. And what you said there, a drug dealer can't exactly call the police and say, I've just been robbed. But of course, the upshot is that then it creates violence and, to and fro between groups of people and so on, and the robberies can be violent. I actually bumped into a guy in Highdown on my second sentence I was working in the gym, and he came. I was sitting down at the end of a gym session, and he came to me and asked me, "Is your name Piers Ravenhill?" And I looked at him, and of course I stood up immediately, and I've looked at him. I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Oh, yeah, I know so and so. She used to be my girlfriend." Blah blah blah. And I noticed he used to come to the gym, and I noticed he had a huge scar down here.
Right.
And one day I said, "Do you mind me asking about that?" And he said, "Yeah, it's no problem." He said, I it's what I do. I rob drug dealers, and it went wrong one night, and I nearly died and had to have open heart surgery. And I didn't really think much of it. And funny enough, I bumped into him probably about 2 years later in Pentonville.
Right.
I'd been security shipped there, and we chatted, and he'd already been there for a while, so it was kind of the done thing. He said to me, "Anything you need," and da-da-da. And we chatted a bit. He was on a different wing to me, but I used to see him. And eventually I just asked him outright. I said, "That girl you mentioned," because I had a little bit of a thing with her before he did.
Right.
I said, and she'd done a bit of prison time for coke. She got caught in a sting by the police. She sold the police some small amounts. And I just said to him, "Was she setting me up for you to rob me?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm glad for you and for me that you didn't do that, because it would have ended badly all round."
Yeah. You wouldn't be here now.
You know, because the street is watching, and you have to kind of man up to things like that. But yeah, it was kind of a new phenomenon to me. Drug dealers didn't really get robbed. They may have been burgled at times back at 20 odd years ago. Lockups would be emptied and stuff like that, but no violence, no none of that. But it's all changed now, and it's one of the many reasons why I'm glad I'm not in that game anymore.
I mean, that is mad. So what actually happened to him? Did he get stabbed or shot?
I think he got stabbed. I didn't actually ask him the full details, but yeah, somebody bit back, and if you do that, that's the chance you take, I guess. And I did speak to him about all of this in Pentonville, and I said he was getting close to being released, relatively close. And I said to him, "So what's your plan?" And he said, "Me and my brother, we're going to just carry on doing what we do." And I said, "Well, okay, that's your business. It's not something I would do. It's not something that like I say, I've been lucky it hasn't happened to me,
right.
But it's quite prevalent now, and it is what it is."
Yeah. And when did you first kind of start getting the firearms? Was it when you heard about that, or was it before?
It was before that. I guess I was kind of in that sort of boys' toys kind of thing, although I was in the game, and I was doing really well in the game, and I knew people, and I think, I mean, just as a kind of guide, the first gun I bought was a double-barreled sawn-off shotgun. Right. So you're not going to be running around with that tucked down your trousers. But I had it, right. And I kept it, and it was one of the guns that I got nicked for in 03.
So so what were the guns you had? You had the sawn-off?
Yeah, I had that. I had a 9mm Beretta and a 6 Hour P228 9mm. I also got nicked with gas, tasers,
right.
Knuckle duster.
So you like Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, and I do. I really think, looking back now, because I am a bit older, and you have a different kind of way of viewing things and interpreting things. I think I was just almost being the Johnny Big Potatoes drug dealer in a sense. I hoped that I'd never have to use those things, and right. Like I say, I did go out once or twice to do certain specific things, business-wise, but guns are not for me. Knives are not for me. I've never stabbed anyone. I've never threatened anyone with a knife. It's just not my thing. I'll have a straightener with you. That's rare now. People don't want to do that. Even in prison, they'd rather have a knife fight than a stand on the cobbles.
I mean, it is kind of crazy because in the old days, like you said, you'd have a straightener with somebody, but then that time when you was talking about drug dealers getting robbed, they were actually robbing the DJs as well. They were actually working out, there's EZ or there's whoever. They know, and he's playing out 4 or 5 times a night, and he's getting 500 quid a time, and it's cash.
Yeah.
And it was only like 2 or 3 grand. It weren't big money, but then they were working out if they went round the house at 6, 7 in the morning when he's at home, go through the door, and then they're getting a few grand. And it's up to today now. Obviously, you've got people stealing people's phones in the street, people watches.
Yeah.
The violence isn't now. I say to my kids, when you're out, you don't really want to start getting in fights with people because you don't know what they're going to pull out on you. You don't know if you're talking to them and their mate comes up and does, you know what I mean? You've got to be, now it's sort of like, one of my mates is a martial arts expert, and he actually said to me, he said, look, he said, you can go and be a black belt in Krav Maga, Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever.
Yeah.
He said, but I always say to anybody, if there's an altercation, fucking hit them and run, right? Or just run. Don't, because you never know what they're going to pull out. You never know if one of their mates is going to pull something out. You never know if someone's got a gun, a knife, acid, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So you're every time you have an altercation, and he said the worst thing is when people have road rage. They jump out of the car, and it's like you don't know what you're jumping out at. No. So if you jump out at someone, go like what happened with Kenny Noy on the M25. That geezer jumped out, and he just stabbed him.
Yeah.
Right. So you never know what that person in that car is going to do.
It's a really difficult thing because when that red mist comes down, you're not thinking that, but you should be, but you're not because no blood's going here. It's all going here. And I've had a few arguments since I got out of prison last year that, when you reflect even 5 minutes later, you just think, fucking hell, mate. Not only are you on licence, but you don't know these 15-year-old. I didn't have any arguments with 15-year-olds, but I'm just saying, 20-year-olds. They're all out there carrying knives around for protection.
Yeah,
I do not understand that concept at all. You don't carry a knife for protection. You carry a knife because if you're going to stab someone with it. I don't see how you're going to protect yourself with it because you may be bringing a knife to a gunfight anyway. And if that person's got a knife and you've got a knife, then you're both getting stabbed. It's not protection. You're right in what you say. It probably discretion is the best part of valor. You should just turn on your heels and go.
Yeah.
The trouble with that is there are a lot of men like me to an extent, and like people I know or knew, people it's very difficult to turn the other cheek because we're not used to it.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that, but I'm talking about the majority of people.
Yeah,
they don't. They somebody bump into them, and they go, mate, which way you going or whatever, and the guy's like, who are you fucking talking to?
Oh, mate.
And the next thing you know, he could just go like that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's weird the way things have gone in this country. It's the same in America. It's the same in Europe. It's not just a UK thing, but it's weird how the violence has increased and people won't think twice about pulling a knife out or throwing something in your face or whatever. They don't, and they don't think of the consequences either, because obviously, there will certainly be repercussions if somebody did that to lots of people that we know. They're going to end up, like you said, there's going to be a retaliation. And even if there isn't a retaliation, that person that's done it will probably end up going to jail.
Yeah.
And if they kill someone, they're going to be looking at a long fucking time.
Yeah.
And you sort of think, for that split second of madness, is it really worth going to jail for 20 years and fucking your life up?
No.
And that's the message that needs to go out. But for some reason, I think the kids, like you were saying, you don't understand why they carry the knives for the protection, but I think it's a badge of honour. I think they want to be like, their mate goes, oh, we're going out tonight. Don't worry, I've got mine. Have you got yours?
yeah,
I've got
yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks like, no one's going to fuck with us tonight. And then have a few drinks or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And then something happens, and then all of a sudden it's like, right. And they don't even know how to use them. So when they're doing it, they're just randomly doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, that thing about protection, no one in their right mind believes that. And I think these people,
well, it's that professor.
they should just be honest about it and say, do you know what? I carry a knife because every other fucker does. And if it comes on top, then I'm going to use it. You can't really say that if, say, for example, 5 Live are asking you, why do you do that? You're going to come out with the usual hackneyed remark of, it's for protection because I don't feel safe when I go. We know the reality of it.
And when you got nicked, Piers, was it just you, or was there a group of you who got nicked?
Oh, the first time, I think there was about 10.
Right.
Some of them I didn't know.
Right. Were they unfairly bought into it? They were just...
I would say 1 or 2 of them were.
Right.
But, when you look back now, National Crime Squad, they don't care about the kind of semantics of it all. I mean, once they had me in handcuffs, they then crashed through around about 45 properties across the southeast.
Wow.
Over 500 police officers. People that had never had a parking ticket in their life were raided just because they knew me.
Wow.
So they don't ask questions. They just...
I mean, that's a massive operation, 500 police officers.
Yeah.
Crashing through 45 people's houses.
Yeah.
What were they looking for? Drugs or money?
Drugs, money, anything really. I mean, just as one example, my sister was raided down in Gosport. Her now late husband was a full-time worker all his life. They dragged him out of bed because he was doing night shifts. This was about 6 o'clock at night. Right. Dragged him out of bed in his boxer shorts, put him in handcuffs and walked him outside into the street.
Wow.
They'd smashed their front door down. Nothing came of it and nothing would ever have come of it. And they knew that. They knew because they'd done an operation for Surrey and Hampshire police had done it for about a year before National Crime Squad came into it. So they knew everything. I don't know why they did that, and they did it to a few other people. And they did it to my mum. They called her a cunt, and armed police raided her sheltered accommodation in Hindhead in Surrey. Called her a cunt, told her you're going down with your son and all this.
Wow. My
mum had mental health problems. She was a widow. She'd been sectioned after she attempted suicide when my dad died. And now she's got SO19 waving guns, wearing balaclavas and Kevlar suits and all the rest of it. And you just think, what the
well,
she was 59 years old, lived on her own. So, yeah, things like
hardly
that.
Fucking, what's the Queen of the South, is she? I mean,
No,
It's
exactly.
like madness.
It was madness. And there were things that they did to just turn the heat up on me.
Right.
They didn't need to do that. They had me banged to rights. I was going guilty all day.
Right.
So yeah, those things they irritated me then, and when I think about them now, yeah, they kind of irritate me. The thing is, though, I don't hate the police. I never have. The police are the police. They nicked me. Fine. I that's their job. What I think, just going back to what you were talking about there with knife crime and all the rest of it, and acid and stuff like that. How I feel about the police is I just feel a sense of disappointment because the streets are empty of coppers now.
They used to be. They were everywhere. If you drove to London and you drove home and it was past midnight, you got a tug.
You're getting a tug.
You're getting a tug.
Yeah.
And it used to annoy the fuck out of me, but I was never drunk.
No.
But it had always annoyed the fuck out of me. But it was always like you was going to get a tug. And you walk around London. I mean, I was in Soho the other night and there was police everywhere. But for some reason, in the places where I think they need to be, I mean, they reckon they've recruited more police now. But I think the problem with, and this goes back to the way the world's changed. Obviously, we live in a different world now where people will film the police. Yeah. They will accuse the police of being racist or accuse the police of being whatever, right? And obviously the police are sort of like tiptoeing around. I mean, that guy the other day where the firearms officer shot.
Yeah.
I think Chris Carber?
Carber, yeah.
Yeah. So he shot him. Now I don't know the history of Chris Carber. I don't know anything about his case.
No.
But the thing is, if you're a firearms officer and you're deployed to go and do something, and somebody there, and you know that person may have a gun or will shoot people.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they behave in a certain manner, you don't want to wait for them to then shoot you. So for me, it's like if you're in the SAS or you're in the SBS or you're in the Marines or the Parachute Regiment or the Armed Response, if you do discharge your firearm, obviously they've got to make sure that the person isn't just shooting someone because they've decided they're going to shoot someone today.
Yeah.
But they should have a little bit of leniency in that, you know, if they do pull the trigger, because we had the head of the SO19 on here,
right?
And that's coming out soon. And the lady actually said to me, she said, you know, whenever any of our officers deploy a firearm, they get put on suspension. We have to investigate them, and it's sort of like, well, doesn't that mean that they don't want to pull the trigger because they're thinking, oh, you know, I could lose my job, I could go to jail for murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of them did walk out over it and said, well, we're going to all walk. You know what I mean? So it's
tricky because
in America,
carte blanche.
I mean,
in America,
if someone comes in your house in America and you shoot them dead, you get away with it. You get a pat on the back. You get a little badge.
Well, exactly right. And obviously, to an extent, in certain states of America, police are accountable for shootings and whatnot. But it's a grey area, and I mean, everything's a grey area.
But everyone says the police are brutal in this country. But if they look at America, that's brutal. That's real. You know what I mean? Over there,
exactly right.
Like I had a friend of mine in New York, and when they had the riots here, I think it was 2011, when they were like attacking people in the street and they were smashing things up and they were looting buildings and shops. And my friend in New York rang me up and he said, what the fuck's happening in London?
Yeah.
He said, if that was in New York, we'd shoot the cunts. You know what I mean? And I laughed because I just thought, fucking hell, you know, that's what we do need to do here. Because
it's a different thing altogether. And I don't know what's right and what's wrong in all of that.
I think we should legalise firearms here. Do you think that'll make England a better place?
I mean, no. Is the short answer, because you know, I mean, the thing about America is it's part of the Constitution, the right to bear, and all this, and that's great. But God damn it, I mean, how many school shootings would we have here, and all of that? You know,
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, you know, and it always amazes me. Like, I get about the right to bear arms, and I actually think that a lot of the stuff in America is bang on. Like, and I think that we should be adopting what they're doing. But I do think that there is a moral obligation that if somebody goes into a gun shop and starts buying AR-15s and machine guns, there's got to be someone that goes, this isn't normal. Why do you need to have 70 firearms in your house? And obviously, if you've got young kids, they look at all and they're like toys. And, you know, when I grew up, I always liked Action Man. So for me, I always wanted to shoot a gun. I always wanted to join, you know, because it was cool, you know, and as any kid would. If your dad's running around with an AR-15 in a garden shooting things, you'd be going, I want to have a go at that. But then, if somebody upsets you at school, you might go in the safe, and that's probably part of what happens out there. I mean, you know,
I mean, I think that their kind of mindsets. It's just a really tricky area. To me, there's no particular right or wrong. I on paper, I tend to agree with the right to bear firearms, but
only if someone robs your drugs. Only if someone robs your drugs or comes into your house.
yeah, maybe that. But it is a muddle, and I don't know what the answers are. So,
and there's always been this like lobby about legalising drugs, right?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
I want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors, Fragrance du Bois. Now, for those of you that don't know about Fragrance du Bois, where have you been? It is one of the leading luxury fragrances, only available in Harrods, Selfridges and Neiman Marcus in New York. They've got so many different fragrances for men, for women. All of the fragrances are unisex, so make sure you get involved and sample the delights of Fragrance du Bois. For all the Criminal Connection podcast crew, we've got a special discount for you. 10% off. All you need to do when you click on the link below and choose your luxury fragrance is to put in CCPOD10 for the 10% discount.
Well, I can see arguments for legalising certainly cannabis. You know, I only found this out fairly recently, but for people with medical reasons, you can now actually get your cannabis from the NHS.
Yep.
I believe that it's just the case that you can't actually smoke it in a joint. You have to vape it, I think. That's right.
My understanding of it is if you have an issue and, you know, whether it's an ache, whether it's a pain, whether it's arthritis, whether it's cancer, whatever, you can actually go to the doctor and ask for a prescription and you can actually buy a medical card which allows you to take it. And I think you can smoke. I don't know because I don't smoke, but I think you can smoke it. You can smoke it in a vape. You can take it in a pill, or inject it. Whatever it is they do.
Yeah.
But you know, I think when there's people that are anti it, but the people that are anti it, you know, you know, in America they've been seizing these sort of cannabis and weed shipments, and they've got fentanyl. They've got chemicals sprayed on them. And obviously if you're smoking that shit, and it's the same here, if people are making stuff in warehouses, you don't know, and there's no quality control, if they're done in you know, like an organic stroke medical environment where it's all tested and you know that what you're getting isn't got any chemicals in it, it's just literally the cannabinoids, and then you get the right amount and then you take it responsibly. You know, there's loads of athletes I know that take it for recovery. There's loads of people. I didn't realise that because I don't smoke. I didn't realise how many different uses it had.
Yeah.
And you do sort of think, well, if it's available in the NHS, it can't be that bad. And it's just like, well, if people are going to smoke it anyway, which they do. I mean, I've seen people walking down the road smoking a split in front of a copper, and the copper's not said a fucking word, right? So you sort of think, well, if nobody actually cares, fucking legalise it, tax it.
Yeah.
You can make some money for the government, and you know, then the government knows who's buying it, who's smoking it. If you're smoking too much, you're having too much, Piers. Now you can't have that much, right? And then you go, okay, you know, I've got a problem, and then you can get it sorted out. But at the moment, there's no control over it. So, and it is like the Wild West. So you don't know what you're smoking, and you don't know if it's going to cause you mental health issues or health issues because it's got fentanyl or fucking chemicals in it. Do you know what I mean? So
I think that is a good argument, and there is a slow kind of evolution or metamorphosis in this country, but it's painfully slow.
But it's legalised in Spain. It's legalised in Germany.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of think, I mean, the only place I don't think it'd be legal, I don't think China would legalise it, and I don't think the Middle East would legalise it, but I think the rest of the world probably will. And there's a lot of people in the world, right? So,
well, there's a lot of good arguments. You know, like you've just touched on, hemp itself has myriad purposes and usefulness.
right.
But obviously, in terms of smoking, I think this country will get there in the end, because I know it's a really tired and probably overused argument. But if you look at A&E on a Friday night, it's never full of stoned people. It is full of drunk people.
Right.
So that in itself, you know, if you times that by X amount of days, months, years, the cost to the public purse is massive.
Do you know what, Piers? We might have just solved the problem with the NHS. If everybody gets stoned instead of drunk, there'd be nobody in the A&E department that'd take all the pressure off the doctors.
Well, yeah, to an extent, I mean, maybe stoned people might be in A&E because they fell over or stubbed their toe somewhere, but, you know,
right.
There is an argument for it. It's just a case of when a UK government... I see it as a matter of risk of office in a sense, because there are still lots and lots of people in this country who are absolutely no way, but they're all the brandy and gin drinkers, really. And you know, it's going to take someone with a pair of, let's say, Donald Trump's sized cojones to actually say, no, we're doing this, and these are the benefits, and this is the probable outcomes which will benefit society.
Rachel Reeves might be watching this and think, actually, that's a really good idea. I can raise a bit more revenue.
Well, the bottom line is, for any government, it's all about capital. If they feel they can turn a buck. But things have changed. Look, I used to co-own a business called sensibleseeds.com, we started off 20 odd years ago selling seeds that we got from Holland and drugs paraphernalia and all of that kind of stuff. Now the same company exists. I'm nothing to do with it anymore, but they sell seeds to the Canadian government for medicinal use, and it's all done through the proper stepping stones. So the seeds come from Holland. They go from sensible seeds to be tested by government. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the department, but then they're tested for any kind of cross-border kind of diseases in terms of other plants and so on, and then they'll come back to sensible, packaged. Then they'll go to Canada. There's other countries that they're involved with now as well. So it's an ongoing process. I don't know how long it will take to happen here, but I'm sure it will one day.
Yeah. And going back to obviously when you got arrested, and you've had your court case, you realised that you're gonna have to plead. You just went guilty.
Yeah,
you had a deal with them though. You said I'll plead for these, and then
that was actually between them and my QC. The first I knew about it was on the day of pleads and directions, and it, like I said, it didn't actually affect my sentence at all.
What did they? And when you spoke to your QC at the time, what did she say? What you were looking at?
She was always quite guarded in kind of guesstimating or hypothesizing. We knew I was banging a lot of trouble. There was no two ways about that, and I knew that I was likely to get the high teens. On the day I was finally sentenced, which was about a year and a half down the line, I went downstairs afterwards, had a quick meeting with my QC in a legal room, and it was her opinion that she felt I'd had a good result, and that she was expecting me to get 20 years.
And what did you get, 17?
I got 17.
Wow.
So the judge started it at 27, and he gave me full credit for pleading, so it reduced it to 18. And then he said, because no one else pleaded guilty at the earliest opportunity, only you, I'm going to credit you for that as well. And he reduced it to 17.
I mean, it's still a fucking long time.
Yeah.
You're hardly going to start dancing going, yeah.
No, I don't know how I felt about it. I don't remember, but I remember how I felt about how it was looking like it was going to go. Our sentencing hearing went on for a day and a half.
Right.
And after the first morning, I went back upstairs with my main co-defendant, Ben, and we sat down in a holding room, and I said, fucking hell, Ben. I said, I will take their arm off for a 15 right now. And he said, Ben's a real optimist. Love him, but a real optimist. He said, no, don't be silly. You're going to get 12 years maximum, and I'm going to get 8 years. And I just looked at him. I said, Ben, have you been listening to what's going on down there? It's like Jack the Ripper's on trial. I said, there's no way that's happening. But if it does, I will hold my hands up and be, bow to your superior kind of knowledge. But I knew we were getting fucked, and we did.
What did he end up getting?
Ben got 13 years, and out of everybody, in hindsight, I mean, I haven't spoken to Ben since he left Swellside in 2007, I think it was. I think Ben got hit hardest, and he didn't deserve that at all. I knew the level that Ben was at in terms of drug dealing and crime. He got hit real hard there. Of course, I got hit hard as well, but I deserved it. What they found and what they didn't find that they could have found, I got what I deserved, and I took that on the chin. Ben, 13, that was real strong. He should have got not even double figures, but
wow,
he took it on the chin as well.
I suppose for Ben, who's a friend of mine who I've known for years, that Budokan in Frimley. I mean, I used to go down there and train down there. One of my guys used to run a security. He had a fight club down there.
Yeah.
And it was one of those places where if you did jiu-jitsu, if you did fight club, if you wanted to box, it was like a fighter's place. So you did get a few, I don't like to use the word undesirables going through there, but they probably looked at that as, you know, because he was there and it was his place, that he was encouraging the undesirables. And then if there was some way of linking that to you or whatever, then that's probably, like you said, he got unfairly dragged into that.
Oh, well, I think how it panned out was actually the whole thing started around Ben. And I've got no issue with that because if you're in the game, it can come from anywhere and there's no point pointing fingers. We never even spoke about it back then. I think because you know Ben, so many people know him. He's a very well known and he's an extremely popular guy. Yeah. I like I say, I don't speak to him, but I do know that everyone likes Ben, everyone. But clearly there were people who resented Ben at the same time. I know he used to do door work and stuff like that. And maybe a couple of people got a little bit of a dig here and there, but I think it started from people saying stuff about him. And of course, when National Crime Squad were brought into it was when Surrey and Hampshire police realised, hang on a minute, we need to look at this guy.
Right.
Because my drivers were dropping things off to Ben and people around Ben, and they kind of put pieces of the jigsaw together and they came to me, and that's when National Crime Squad got involved, and the rest is history.
Right. And when you obviously your first sort of day in prison, did you sort of think to yourself, fuck me, this is going to be a long time, or did you just take it on the chin and think, well, I've done the crime, I've got to do the time?
Well, the police were, I mean, I knew it was bad straight away, just in terms of what we were caught with. I didn't know, but obviously should have known that because of that, they were already onto everything else. And a few signs for me about the seriousness, I was escorted in a 3-car convoy by armed police to Guildford Police Station with an India 99 on top of us. I was then presented to the Assistant Chief Constable of Surrey Police.
When you say in India, are you on about helicopters?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They took me straight to the Assistant Chief's office, sat me down. He was there on his desk and he said, I'm here because I'm the most senior officer available, which is the protocol for what I need to tell you. You'll be held incommunicado until further notice. You won't have a solicitor. You won't be able to call anybody. So I then was taken to a cell in Surrey, in Guildford Police Station. And again, another kind of heads up to the problems that lay ahead. They opened the door. I walked in. There's a guy sitting on a bench in a suit. He stood up. Mr. Ravenhill, my name is Gary Parkin. I work for Confiscation Unit, and I'm just here to tell you that I will be responsible for relieving you of everything you own. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, I haven't even been charged yet. Hang on a minute. But yeah, obviously, he said his piece. He tried to shake my hand. I stood and looked at him. And as he left, he just said, I'll do you one favour with your confiscation. He said, don't fuck with me and I won't fuck with you. And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what a confiscation order was.
Right.
I soon found out. But I sat on that in that cell that night, and it was a pretty dark time because, yeah, I knew that I was banging trouble. And when National Crime Squad came to try and roll me over in Highdown, which was the first jail we went to for about 10 days before Belmarsh, again, it was another kind of signal to me. Jesus, I mean, I was so new to everything in terms of prison. I was told I had a legal visit and I said, no, I don't. And they took me anyway. And there was 2 guys I'd never seen, and they said the National Crime Squad and so on. And even they said to me at the time, which had been said to me several times by coppers at Guildford, you know, you're getting 25 years, right? And I'm trying not to listen to them because I know that they're probably just trying to goad me, trying to upset me. They didn't need to try and upset me. My life was ruined and I had to process that. But 25 years, look, I didn't know enough to even know that I wouldn't serve all of that. So I'm there thinking, shit, I'm going to be like 55 when I leave prison. That's ridiculous. I learned quickly because I had to, and I enlightened myself, and yeah, I knew that I was bang in trouble. But it was, like I said before, it was all about damage limitation from the very earliest days.
What did you lose? I mean, what was the monetary value of what they took off you, would you say?
In total, from the first one, I would say that I lost close to 3 million. And I have this benefit figure still hanging over me, which just goes into ridiculous numbers. I don't even pay attention to it anymore. I was ordered to pay a large amount the second time. Basically, they confiscated everything again. So I now have 2 benefit figures hanging over me for the rest of my life.
So what was the first one? They took 3.
The benefit figure was, I believe, just shy of 9 million.
Wow.
And the second time, I'd only been out for 3 years. They put the benefit figure then at 1.4 million. Benefit figures are a bit of a tricky thing because a lot of people understandably believe that they pay what they're ordered to pay and that's them done, but the benefit figure stays with you forever. And now I'm in a situation right now where it's not an issue for me because I've got no money, but I can't buy a house. I can't have a mortgage anymore because they'll just come and slap an order on it.
Right.
I can't own a car that's worth more than a couple of grand because they'll come and swag it. I can't have savings. It's like I said, those things.
So it's literally like you've got to pay that money back.
Yeah, like I know that.
But where do they get the figure from, or is it just a made-up figure? They base it on what they think you've had.
They literally make it up, and the judge will rubber stamp that, and that's done. You can argue the figure and have a bit of kind of horse trading and get it down, but on my first case, I didn't understand anything about confiscation at all, so it all just happened in front of me. My QC didn't know confiscation, my solicitor didn't know. And to be fair, I think we were all more concerned about damage limitation in terms of sentencing.
Right.
So that wasn't very helpful. The second time around, I went to prison with severe traumatic brain injury the second time. I couldn't even think about confiscation even if I wanted to. So again, I just let them get on with it. Right. I was in a bad place here the second time. I'd not long come out of hospital when I was arrested, and I tried without any real ability to focus on recovery. I knew I was fucked the second time and it hurt, and I knew that I was going to be a long time away again. But I just nearly died in an accident 3 months before I got arrested, so that gave everything a bit of perspective. I needed to concentrate on recovering.
And when you went into jail and you did your first 17-year sentence, how long did you actually do out of that?
I did 8.5 years. It was what's called a determinate sentence. So unlike some of the poor bastards that get IPP sentences, I had a release date. Back then it was slightly different because I was arrested on older sentencing protocol, whereby because I had a sentence of more than 15 years, I would have had to sit a parole board.
Right.
But that changed halfway through my sentence and it became a fixed release date, which was a relief because parole boards, to me, I've just been watching recently Parole on BBC, and I've known this because I've been in the system. Parole board is pretty much a lottery. Those people who are parole board members, they're intelligent. Yeah, they're intelligent and kind of worldly, but not real worldly, I feel.
Right.
And they're looking at everything in a sort of quite a black and white way. and it's never that simple.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be one of those people, because the chances of making the right or wrong decision are small.
Right.
And I also kind of take part, if you like. I'm watching these programs, and I'm looking at the background and how they've been and what they did and how they were in prison and so on and so forth. It's such a difficult call, because I've lived around these very people for years and years and years. And a lot of them, I just think, I don't think I'd release you. And that's shit, because I'm one of them. But I try to look at things like that completely in a completely impartial way.
Right.
And those were the sort of conclusions I've reached. And I just think it's a lottery. Ultimately, you've got to give everyone their chance and see what happens.
And for you, when you was in jail, did you have any ag with anyone, or because people knew you were sort of?
I'd say probably a bit of both, because I had some fights, and I did a few things that weren't necessarily fights, but in my view, in that time, needed to be done. But actually, I think overall, considering where I was before prison, I think I did fairly well. I just kind of did my own thing as much as I could, and I don't remember. I was threatened a few times on my second sentence, but for ridiculous. It wasn't me, the person. It was me, the job I was doing.
Right.
The first time around, you could have a straightener. Prisons weren't full of CCTV like they are now, and second time around, it's all about knives. And I had a few fights, no more than anyone else.
Right.
I won a few, I drew a few.
Right. Well, and what was it just over bullshit, or was it over something?
It's a lot of it's just prison politics, and I was always really careful not to involve myself in prison politics.
Right.
You do what you do, I'll do what I do. That won't bother you in any way, all of you people, but don't come to me with, I'm an independent. I've always been like that. I don't want to nail my colours to anyone else's mast. They're on my mast. And if my mast offends you, I'd be surprised, because I'm generally quite a quiet guy. But yeah, prison politics and prison factions, and now it's all gang culture in prisons, and I'm too old for all that. I'm not a gang culture person. I'm just a bod.
And when you was in the jail for that amount of time, what was did you see a lot of violence in there?
Yeah, I did. I've seen enough things that even after the first time, I didn't want to go back and see any of that stuff. But I always try to put perspective and context. Prison is like a squashed up version of out here.
Right.
So you will see things. You hope you don't, and but sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So we had a guest on there, Peter Fury, and he told me about the worst thing he saw in jail, and that was death by a sharpened toilet brush. Somebody actually put a sharpened toilet brush in someone's neck and killed him in front of him in the jail. Could you top that?
That's really quite a bizarre coincidence, because I did see someone stabbed in the neck with a broken toilet brush. They'd snapped the head off it, sharpened it on the cell floor.
Right.
There was it was kind of an ongoing thing.
Right. Wow. So this toilet brush thing is a thing then, right?
Well, it is, because I saw someone get shanked with one.
Twice
in the neck.
Wow.
And they were bleeding badly. I can't say whether it hit an artery or not, because we were all banged up immediately.
Did the guy live though or not?
I believe he did, but
right, thank God.
I don't know if he did, is the truth, Terry, because information like that didn't really filter back to us. And if it did, it was through screws, and you don't know whether they're telling you the truth or not a lot of the time. But I think if he had died, we would have heard about it.
Yeah.
So I'd say likely he didn't.
Yeah.
But it was a shock to see, and I've seen a few things, but that was out of the blue, really. And
if you're in jail, and you see anybody walking around with a toilet brush, fucking run.
Yeah, unless it's got the head attached, then
he might be
one.
just cleaning the toilet.
Yeah.
And have you got any funny prison stories? Because obviously we talked about the dark side, but was there any funny stuff?
Now you're asking, Terry. To be honest, I'd have to really sit and think. I mean, there are lots of things. It's like life. There are things where you might get a moment of kind of schadenfreude where somebody takes a fall and it's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, the wrong moment. There are things there's a lot of gallows humour, which some buy into, some don't. Yeah. I had a friend, I won't name him, his mum died, and his way of coping with that was to sort of every now and then just come with an outburst of "Ding dong, the witch is dead," from The Wizard of Oz. And I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's not funny, and you know, his family or friends might be offended by something like that, but I just saw it as a coping mechanism, a way to push on through.
I've always found, like, if you're around certain people, they always laugh and make a joke out of bad shit. And I think it is a way of coping. Yeah. And you know, I mean, if I'd have been there when he'd done it, I would have laughed. You know what I mean? Because and then you'd be thinking, oh, should I be laughing? Well, and then he'd be like laughing, and you'd be like, oh, well, it's all right, I laugh.
I'd be laughing with him. The context was obvious from Dot, and so you've got to laugh. I'm certainly not going to stand up and say, that's your mum, you know, that's your business. It's your family. Your mum died. You deal with it in your way. So, and I think gallows humour, there are so many things that go on in prison that you'd rather not sort of encounter, that you tend to laugh it off, because what are your alternatives? What are your options here? You can go and sit and mope and do your own head in about stuff. And
what did you do anything did you study anything in prison? I mean, how did you sort of, or did you just train a lot in the gym?
Yeah, I did. On my first sentence, I did quite a bit of academia, and I mean, I did diplomas in Spanish and French with the OU, but I was kind of paying lip service to it because I already had Spanish and French A-level. Right. It's about the same, but it was nice to just have something to focus on. I did my maths A-level, which I gave up. I paid for that myself. I did it self-study like the OU. And there was a moment where I was looking at quadratic equations and I just thought, you know what, mate, listen.
Life's too short.
You're doing 17 fucking years and now you're punishing yourself.
Right.
So that morning I took everything out onto the landing, chucked it all in a bin and never regretted it.
And how long did it take you from being an ACAT to go down to the lower categories?
Well, we came off the book and we probably did another 4 or 5 months in Belmarsh. Then I was BCAT I stayed BCAT for about 4 years. So the progress was kind of slow, but I was in Swellside for just under 4 years, and very different to what I've heard about Swellside for the last 10, 15 years. It was a really good jail back then. Right.
Is that your favourite one, if you could
yeah, I would say it was the best 4 years I did, because I was a gym orderly. My wing was calm relatively. There were a few bits and bobs here and there. My view of the jail in general was calm. Right. Again, bits and bobs here and there, cell fires, bit of stabbing here and there. But what I've heard of it in the last sort of 10, 15 years, it's an absolute zoo there. And, so I was glad in hindsight to do the 4 years there. I think the prison service, the staff there, their general kind of default setting was, look, these guys are all doing a fucking long time. Let's not make it any more difficult for them unless we really have to. Right. And that was a good approach. it worked because the place was relatively calm. And bear in mind, even then, my sentence of 17 years was one of the smallest in that jail.
Right.
It was mostly lifers, some doing 30-year tariffs, 35, 40 even. There was a guy who'd done 42 years when I was there. So I had a mindset about it all. I was, like I say, doing relatively, and I had a release date as well, but you respect other people's situations. I didn't crow about that. Of course, Why would I? I was still doing long enough.
Right.
But yeah, and so after 4 years in Swellside, I got my Cat C. I went to Maidstone, which was then, after I'd only been there 3 months, and it changed to a jail only for foreign nationals and sex offenders, so I was gone.
Right.
I did another year and a half in Cat C, and then I went to open prison when I had about 15 months left, and I completely fucked that up and got thrown out after about 5 months.
What happened?
I just lost the plot and started dealing spice, steroids, phones, alcohol, anything that was able to turn a pound note.
Right.
And yeah, I got caught doing that, and I got kicked out, and I deserved it. And
But where did you end up? You then went back to a CCAT again?
I went to Elm Lee, which is a BCAT local right next to Swellside and Stamford Hill. They're all together.
Right.
And they had me in the gym there straight away. Literally, one of the gym officers came and got me from reception when I landed there, because they all knew me from Swellside and Stamford Hill.
Right.
I've been gym orderly in both of those. And security didn't like it because of my steroid sales in Stamford Hill, so they sacked me from that. And then the gym came and said, look, we'll just have you down here all day.
Right.
We don't pay you, you're not employed, but do that. Security got onto that after a few days, and I got ghosted out to, I ended up in High Point. I got my face cut on the first morning I was there. 2 guys robbing my cell. We had a bit of an altercation. One of them cut me with a typical kind of razor blade in a toothbrush thing. Because I wouldn't inform on them, I got moved to what was then Edmonds Hill, just up the road from High Point. It's now High Point North. And I did my last 9 months in there in closed conditions. They offered me a town visit the day before I was released from prison. And I just went, I'm in fucking Suffolk, a million miles from any of my people. You want me to do a town visit for 2 hours the day before I'm fucking getting out anyway? I said, no disrespect here, you know what I'm like, but you can stick that town visit up your arse. You know, it's like you're taking the piss out of me. So that was that. I didn't have the town visit, and I went home the next day.
Did anything happen to those guys that were doing that? Did they do it to anyone else, or was that just their thing?
The robbery thing. Yeah. Well, I'm not proud of this, and people know this. I've talked about this on my TikTok several times. One of the guys ended up with a big biro stuck right in his thigh as he left my cell.
Right.
That's the only time I've ever been involved in anything like that in terms of stabbing someone or threatening anyone with a knife or a pen.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything because they wanted me to grass these guys up. I didn't even know who they were for a start. I'd been there less than 24 hours. As I said to them, look, I've done 7.5 years. If you want to go and look at my stack of paperwork, please come back to me if you find anything in there that indicates I'm going to tell you anything, because you'll be looking a long fucking time.
Right.
And I got shipped out the next day.
Right.
So I don't know what happened to those guys. I had one friend on that wing, but he was on another spur, so I couldn't really speak to him. Right. I think those guys came from his spur. Whether he knew who they were, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I was hoping you said they fell down the stairs or something.
No, well, the first one who cut me, he got out because
Right.
he did that from behind. I'd already whacked this one in front of me. This one kind of jumped on my back and it was a bit of a tussle, and he did that and then he was gone, but he left his mate behind. Now this fucker's got to get past me.
Right.
And he did get past me, but he will have had a fucking limp for a week
Right.
or two.
Yeah.
I mean, that I actually really hurt my thumb
Right.
putting that in him.
Right.
I was angry,
Right.
and I lost control of myself in that moment. So yeah, if they were doing other robberies, one of them was.
I'm sure something would have happened to him at some point.
Yeah, you know, Peter thieves. They're not well liked in prison. All of the years I did, it was always said that a Peter thief would get their fingers put in the doorway and the door slammed on their fingers. And it may be that used to happen. I never saw it happen, but it would have been a good deterrent.
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, you might not like some of the people you live with in prison, but we're all there together and you don't rob each other. You just don't fucking do it.
No, it's mad.
Unless you're a bit more of a low life.
And when you got out,
Yeah.
was you like, it must have been a bit weird because obviously you've been banged up and that's like almost a decade. So
Yeah.
when you come out, the world's changed, things have moved on. What was it like when you?
Well, I do get asked this and I do think about it. The first time it was really very comfortable. I was collected by my ex-girlfriend and our daughter. That was lovely. And I know this sounds a bit throwaway, but I'd still say it within a couple of hours, it was like I'd never been in prison.
Wow.
And I actually went and scored 2 kilos of coke that afternoon. I knew that I'd decided that I was going back to what I did before. I wasn't especially happy about it, and there were particular reasons why I made that final decision. And yeah, so I was not just out of prison and had forgotten about it. I was now going and paying cash for 2 kilos of coke on the day I got released.
Did you think? Did you not? So the prison thing didn't really deter you or make you think, oh, actually, maybe I changed my ways. Did you come out more angry? Just think, oh, fuck you, I'm just going to go back.
There was one moment that really kind of tipped the balance because for years on my first sentence, I was intending to just get out, live a normal life. I was intending to do what I'm now doing, although my life isn't necessarily normal right now. It's kind of chaotic, but it's crime-free, and that's the bottom line. The first time, I got angry because they confiscated my inheritances.
Right.
Because I thought, okay, fair enough. Take all of my ill-gotten gains. That's one thing, although a lot of it wasn't ill-gotten, but I wasn't going to argue the toss with them. But when they came to me and I got a letter from the confiscation unit at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey, and they said, we hear that your mum died. We heard you had an inheritance. Sign this paperwork. It's ours. And I spoke to them on the phone a few times and just said, you know, my mum was a straight goer her entire life. She didn't have much because she lost everything when my dad died. And the same thing again a couple of years later with my nan. And it was really, my mum's thing pissed me off. My nan's thing was the kind of the tipping point. And I just thought, yeah, I did. I'll be honest about it because it's shit and I regret it. But I just thought, fuck you lot, I'm having it all back. I'm going to come and get it all back. And that was my attitude. And it took the second kick in the bollocks to change that attitude. And
how long did, from when you come out, was you doing it before you got nicked again?
I got arrested on the 3rd anniversary of my release. And Surrey Police did an operation on me, which they put on hold while I was in hospital for 6 weeks after my accident. And they just recommenced it when I left hospital. again, hindsight is always 2020, but I was actually in St George's Hospital in Tooting. I was in a coma. They didn't give me much chance for the first few days. After I came out of my coma, they had to induce me because I was wild. And after the induced coma, I was wild. I punched a doctor. I spat at people. I was racist in there. I actually wrote a letter to the ward. My daughter was at university doing a nursing degree. I was in Coldingley, and I decided I wanted to see all my notes from my time in hospital, and I got it all, and there was like 500 pages, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading me saying fucking horrible things to black members of staff, and, you know, just being an outright arsehole. I wrote a letter, a kind of open, generic letter to everyone there, and I just said, look, I'm really fucking sorry for what I did. I don't remember any of it. You know that I wasn't compos mentis, and I just want to apologise because I'm not that person. So I don't know who received that. I don't know who read it, but it was important to me to at least say my piece.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so...
Were they on you from when you left, or do you think they give you the benefit of the doubt? And then,
in terms of
you said 3 years. You said you had 3 years.
I see. People say this. It's a commonly held belief in prison that people either say, "Watch it, you're high profile. They'll be all over you as soon as you walk out the gate." There may be some truth in that. I never looked around and saw anything untoward. I had the serious organised crime prevention order, which I've still got, so that kind of took care of it anyway. Right. My first probation meeting when I got out last year was with probation, but also officers from Surrey Police were there to remind me of all of my obligations to the prevention order. And they clearly had thoughts about me, opinions about me as a person. I told them I was starting work 10 days after my release. Who are you working for? Do they know about you? All this stuff. And I'm just there saying, yeah, they know more about me than you do. My job's secure, right, and I'm very lucky. But I could feel that they were getting at, this bloke shouldn't have a fucking job. He's a scumbag ex-criminal.
Right.
I may have been wrong about that, but I think I was right, because actually somebody in authority who deals with me or used to deal with me, doesn't anymore. She told me, yeah, just so you know, Surrey Police fucking hate you. Right. And they would put you back in a heartbeat.
Wow.
And that's fine, because it just gives me that, not that I need it, but it gives me that extra feeling of, you're out now, you're free, you've got a job, you're living your life. Yeah, Surrey Police hate you. That's up to them. I don't hate them.
Have you thought about moving to Berkshire?
Well, I've just moved back to Surrey from Hampshire. As it goes,
in Hampshire, okay.
So everything had to be transferred to Hampshire, and
the Hampshire police hate you now.
Well, probably. I don't know. You know, that's their right. And I say this as well. You know, a lot of people say that I'm a decent human being and a decent man. I believe that they're probably mostly right. But of course, there's lots of people in society who have every right to fucking despise me.
Right.
I get that. I'm an ex-criminal. I dealt a lot of drugs. A lot of things went inside people's bodies that were directly caused by me. And yeah, a lot of people have feelings about that, and they're entitled to them, and they're entitled to hate me. But I can only say in my defence, I finally learned my lesson, and I don't do it anymore. So, and I'm sorry for what I did. I am.
Well, no, it's good to hear that. But going back to that 3-year spin when you come out from the first sentence, and you obviously, I mean, did you go from like 0 to 100 pretty quick? Because it was like, Piers is back.
Well, I avoided that for that reason,
Right.
because I wanted to try and keep myself really low key again.
Right.
So I took a bit more time.
Do you know what? I love that. Piers being low key with the keys.
Yeah, I'm down with the kids. So yeah, I took a bit more time, and my real focus was staying under the radar.
Right.
I changed my name by deed poll. I got a whole new set of identity, which is why I'm also banned from changing my identity for the next 4 years and so on. Not that I need to or want to, but I needed to be able to travel abroad without raising suspicion.
Right.
Spain, Holland, one or two other places, and I managed to do that. So yeah, but the 3 years thing, it was kind of chaotic. But you know, I did it, and the upshot was that I got myself in a shitload of trouble again.
And what was like you said, they were mounting this operation against you.
Yeah.
But what did it end up being? What did they get you with this time?
Oh well, they actually found just over 2 kilos of Class A, which was mostly coke and a little bit of MDMA.
Right.
They were about 40 kilos of mostly cannabis, skunk from Holland, a little bit of sort of specialist resins, Nepalese bits and bobs, and about 250,000 Valium.
Right.
And there were 3 separate charges. So conspiracy to supply Class A for the 2 and a bit kilos, conspiracy B, conspiracy C, and I pleaded guilty to all of them. I actually, out of time, appealed my own sentence about 3 years ago before I was released, because it suddenly occurred to me that I pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply 2 kilos of cocaine. I got 27 years for that, reduced to 17 for my pleas. I would be really surprised if you'll find anyone in the prison system who got 17 years for pleading guilty for 2 keys of coke.
Right.
I would be very surprised. I knew I was in a lot of trouble, and actually my QC this time around said to me at our very first meeting that he thought I'd get life. For someone who was struggling with brain damage at the time, that was difficult to process. But yeah, I knew I was in a lot of trouble, and I'd be interested to know the stats, but I can't imagine anyone getting 17 years for 2 keys of sniff, having pleaded guilty with a reduction from 27. Right. I think it's unheard of.
Where was the stuff? Did you have it hidden somewhere? Or?
It was in my house. I had a house, very quiet, very out of the way in the countryside. It was rented through my false documents, and I never had anybody there except my girlfriend, my daughter, her then boyfriend, and two of my drivers who were doing deliveries and pickups. So I thought that I was under the radar still, but you know, when they come, they'll find you. Right. They did. So.
And when you got sentenced, you got another 17 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, was it like deja vu, or was you?
Do you know what? It was very, very different to the first time around. The first time, it was almost a lot of the early time there was kind of surreal. It felt like you were living in a out of body experience to an extent. The second time, I had this terrible brain damage. My girlfriend at the time got arrested and ended up doing time. I really fucking struggled with that. I could not deal with, because I knew I was banging trouble myself. That I can deal with. Obviously, I've upset a lot of people outside, friends, family. Oh, not again. And I felt like every one of them had the right to just completely shut the door and lock it on me forever. But the brain damage and knowing that my girlfriend, they were gunning for her, and I couldn't work out why, but in some ways that alone kept me going, because I really didn't want to keep going for quite a while.
Right.
So both arrests were very, very different, and I really, really felt it the second time. I understand now, sitting here, how much it affected me the second time, and still affects me.
Right.
It's still within me. Everything is still there. You know, I'm being treated for mental health problems now. I have too much baggage and information from everything that's happened. There's too much in there. And
is it like post-traumatic stress? Is that what?
Well, I've been off the record diagnosed recently with PTSD, severe depression, severe anxiety, and personality disorder.
Right.
I have my first actual on the record assessment next week.
Right.
And I made a decision about 6 months ago that I needed to try and unravel and reconstruct some of the mess that's going on in my head.
Well, I think when you go through what you've been through, lots of people would never even be able to imagine what it's like. But because you've been through it, it's definitely had an effect on you mentally, physically. Yeah. And like you said, because you've now sort of realised the area of your ways, and you like you said, you live in a crime-free life. You've obviously written your book, which you've just released, and you're working on another book. You know, there's an old saying about it's good to talk, and I think for you to deal with that, however you deal with it, I don't really know how they do it, but then you can kind of get rid of that and heal yourself, and then you can obviously live.
See, I agree with the good to talk, and I encourage other people to do it. And my default is that I don't like talking to people about my shit.
Right.
There's a lot of followers of mine on TikTok who would say that that's not necessarily true, because I do 10-minute videos and I talk about a lot of stuff. But what those people don't know, and that they don't have to know, is that I'm very selective about what I do talk about.
Right.
Certainly with myself and my past and my present.
Yeah.
But also just being mindful of how other people perceive things you say, and what's going on in other people's lives. I'm very lucky. It was a complete accident, but I've got like 16,000 followers on TikTok. And
how good is that though, Piers? I mean, TikTok for me, my daughter got me on it, and I just think it's such a great platform. Like you said, you can sort of vent on there. Yeah. You can do. Have you done some lives as well?
I've done a few lives.
Yeah.
In fact, I am planning provisionally to do one tonight, because I haven't done one for ages.
Oh, wow.
I'm very funny with TikTok and all social media.
Right.
I only do what fucking suits me in the moment. And I know that there needs to be a bit more of a kind of give and take with it all.
Right.
But that again is probably part of my mental health. If I don't want to do it, then I'm not doing it, and that's that.
Right.
And I can't predict. I don't know what Piers is going to wake up every morning, and that's why I'm trying to find out what I can do with my mental health.
Right.
But yeah, TikTok's a mad thing. If you'd asked me the day I got out, I would have said, no fucking way am I ever going to do that.
You're going to be TikTok famous.
And now, I mean, I don't have any particular agenda with it. I don't make money from it. I get paid a little bit for video kind of viewings and whatnot.
Have you done any battles on there yet?
I did one. Yeah. I didn't understand it at all. It was during a live.
Right.
And whoever it was, I don't remember, but they were obviously a pro.
Right.
So this battle's going on, and I'm winning, and I'm getting further and further ahead, and gets to the last 37s. It's like the fucking blitz. This guy's people just knocked me out of the park in 30 seconds.
Right.
And I don't even know what he got from that, what benefit.
No, so
do they earn money from it?
So my daughter was the one who said you got to go on TikTok. I joined TikTok years ago, but never got it. I thought it was just a platform where you do silly videos of you dancing and falling over or dressing up or whatever. But what I've used it for is basically to let people know about what I'm doing. And what I've really liked doing is connecting with people. So like me and you can go on there, we can have a chat and have a laugh, and then we can have a battle. And then what happens is people will, we don't, when we have a battle, we don't have a battle, we're just having a chat. But then people like what we're saying, or you could, mention, about your mental health stuff and that you're, seeing somebody and blah, blah. And then somebody will go, I want to give you a gift. And then they'll send you something. Right. And some things you get 10p for, some things you get a pound for. Yeah. But if you're on there for, so I've got an agency approach me and they said, look, we'll give you a set of rules. And if you follow them, you can grow your following. And obviously for you, the reason why you want to grow your following is because when you have a book to release, obviously if they like you, and they will like you, that's why they're following you, the chances are they will buy your book, right? Yeah. So if you think you've got 16,000 now, you grow that to 50,000 by just doing an hour a day. That's what he said to me. He said, Terry, and I can't always do it because if I've got a busy day or I don't feel like, because it is draining doing it. Yeah. If you do think, fuck this, right, then I don't do it. But he said, if you can dedicate an hour a day where you just go live, just talk about your day, talk to people, and then connect with people you want to talk to. Yeah. He said, you'll grow your following. And I've had battles and connected with people that I've had on the podcast. So like Marvin Herbert, Darren G, all these guys have come in and we've just had a right laugh. Yeah. And I've just found that it's growing into something that's better than any other platform at the moment. And I think that's why TikTok's so big now. Yeah. Because you can go on there and sing and dance. You can go on there and fool yourself, but you can also go on there and talk about serious stuff. And you can talk about your book, you can talk about your life. Yeah. And you have got a great story, Piers. I mean, hearing you talk today and sharing all your experiences and your stories and getting through that second prison sentence, like you said, that was fucking hard for you. And you got to the end of it. And I take it when you got released, you were like, I'm out, I'm done.
I was out and done before that. I'm glad I didn't even... on my first sentence, I kind of lurched from one feeling to the other with in terms of going back to crime. But the second time, well, there's something I remember really clearly, and I called my daughter. I'd just been nicked. I'd just landed in Highdown, and I called her and I just said, I am so fucking sorry. I said, look, I know my words may seem empty to you because here I am again, but I said, I will never fucking do this again. I will never, ever do this. And if I do, you should walk away from me and forget I ever existed. And that would be hard for me to take and hard for my daughter to do, but that's how strongly I felt about it. And yeah, there are moments during those 8.5 years, the second time, where, you have you're allowed to think about stuff, right? And I think about everything. I am one of life's thinkers. I dissect and just go deep in everything. There were moments where I thought, do you know what? I'll just do a little bit and tick over. But no, you're either all in or you're all out, and right. I'm all out because I don't want to fucking spend another day locked up. It's. There are people who may watch this who have done a lot of time and are involved or have been involved, who will say, stop being a pussy, mate. But I can't do another day. That's how I see it. I'm done. Yeah. It done me the second time around. It really did. Right. And I'm glad.
And looking back on your life, Piers, of crime, I mean, 34-year jail sentence. It's mad when you add it up. I know you didn't do 34, but still to have that sentence put on you, it's sometimes people don't live that long, so it is like a life sentence. But for you, I mean, if you could have your time again, would you think you would have done the same thing? Or
I think, well, it depends which me. If it was me knowing and having the attitudes that I have now, then things could have been would have been very different. I kick myself regularly. People who know me and people on TikTok know that I am by far my biggest critic. I really beat myself, and I know that I've had some amazing opportunities handed to me on a plate even from the moment I was adopted, and I didn't take advantage of any of them. I can only say in my defence that I never had a mentor to tell me this is what can happen. I had my parents, but we never had any conversations that weren't parent-child. And I regret that, because my dad could have really schooled me well. He'd been around the block enough times. So I never had that. And looking back now, that's probably the thing that, so if I was to advise my 10-year-old self, I would say, find that person that will you don't have to drain their time and energy. You just have to observe and listen to them, because they know and they will help you without even trying. And things would have been very, very different.
Do you know what? Have you done any mentoring?
I haven't officially, no, but I've done plenty of stuff in prison for people. Did a lot of public speaking. I've, smaller things like being a toe-by-toe mentor. I was a peer tutor in education several times over the 17 years. I was a listener for years and years. I was the scheme coordinator in Belmarsh and Swellside. So to an extent, that is some kind of mentoring. And probably the reason you're asking me this, I think, is a lot of people have mentioned it to me. It's been in my mind for years. It's just, I have to be really kind of upfront about it. I'd like to help people. I really would. But I think pay my bills.
But I think it would. And I think what I picked up from hearing your story is, obviously, like you said, you beat yourself up about the mistakes you made. You got regrets, but everyone has regrets. You know what I mean? Everyone makes mistakes. So, but I think what you've been through and what you've got, you can't buy that. You can't learn that. You have to go through it. And because you've had that real life experience, I do think there's probably a lot of kids right now that. Maybe this is an idea. You might not want to do this, but you could potentially set up a charity, and you could basically go into schools and basically say to the kids, listen, guys, I didn't have this advice. This is what I've done. Don't be me. Do you know what I mean? But this is what you can do. This is the opportunities. Because I think a lot of kids at school now, they're getting told about all these genders. They're getting told about all this. You can identify as a dog and a cat and all this stuff. And they're not actually getting that. What they need to be told is you can be anything you want to be, and basically if you go down that road, that's what's going to happen, right? And I've done it, and it ain't fucking good. You lose everything, and like you say, when you actually put it in context, I had millions. I've now got no millions, and I've got this fucking massive amount of money on my head. So if I do earn any more money, they're just going to unless I win the lottery, I'm probably going to be paying it back till I die. So most kids will look at that and go, fuck that. Do you know what I mean? But they need to hear it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And they need to hear it from just someone saying, if you do this, this will happen. People go, well, fucking, so what? Don't apply to me. But if somebody who's actually, you can talk about it passionately.
Yeah.
I think it's
I agree with you on that, Terry. I do have worthwhile things to say. I think, like I said, it's always been in my mind for the last few years, and I want to be completely honest about myself. I am a kind of person who I basically would like someone to just come along and go, you, come on, you're doing this. Because the legwork it doesn't scare me, but I feel like I don't necessarily need to put myself under that pressure right now or possibly ever.
Right.
And I worry about the transition. Look, right now, the job I do, it's a good job. I'm my own boss. I make reasonably good money from doing it. And I don't want to risk putting myself in a period of time where there is no money coming in, I've got bills to pay. I have a council property,
Right.
which I'm so grateful for. It's the first fixed address I've had for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I don't want to lose it because I can't pay my fucking rent. So
Right.
I would.
I was
I
thinking
would
more
love
of a
to do
side,
it.
more of a side hustle, Piers, rather than actually giving up your job. I just thought that might be, once you've gone through your healing phase and your counselling thing, and you're out the other side, and you've got your next book going. Obviously, this podcast to go out. Hopefully, that raises a lot of awareness for you, for your book, and but I just thought it's a good idea.
I think if you put me on the spot, Terry, I'd say that is probably inevitable at some point. It's just the timing. It's just sometimes in life we know when the moment's right because it's right, and you suddenly realise it, and that's probably what I'll be mindful of. I'm sure there will come a time. You know, who knows? It could be tomorrow, it could be next year or whatever. There will come a time when it's right, and I will do it. I want to do it, and like I said, I feel like I've got plenty to say, but without being a know-all or patronising people or being condescending in any way. This is my story. I wouldn't advise it. Take from that what you will.
Right. Well, I think that's the best advice ever.
Yeah, well,
Just say no.
Yeah. Go on, Zamo.
I'm going to start singing that song. Just say no.
Oh, I love
no.
Grange Hill. You know,
Have good times.
I always remember the intro with the sausage.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I actually, it's actually quite funny. A few years ago, we had a film premiere, and Roland come to the film premiere.
Oh, Roland.
He just done me. I was like, "Fucking that's Roland."
Yeah.
And he went, "Oh, fucking it." And it's bad for him because I don't know if he's ever done anything else. And obviously, 30 years on, everyone still goes, Roland.
Yeah.
Just like, fucking,
What was
leave me
his
alone.
girlfriend's name, or sort of girlfriend, the black girl? I can't. It might have been Michelle.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, great times.
Yeah.
That was when we didn't have all this fucking headache. And
Well, it was Dusty Bin. There was the Generation Game, Bruce Forsyth. I mean,
yeah, I used to live.
Bullseye.
I lived about a quarter of a mile from Bruce Forsyth on Wentworth, and he was not a nice person, as it goes.
Oh, really?
His screen persona was very different. Me and a couple of friends from the golf course knocked on his door one day. We wanted to get his autograph, and okay, his private property, fair enough. We made a mistake. Opened the door, off, slammed the door in our faces, and I thought, looking back, I thought it was a bit over the top. We were kids, no need for that. But yeah, and Bruce Forsyth.
So I take it you didn't watch him again after that.
Oh, he was good on telly, wasn't he? But those kinds of things are not really my thing.
Right.
Play your cards right and all the kind of, it's not really my thing. But I think he was regarded as a bit of a national treasure.
Yeah.
And I mean, he certainly had a
I think he was the only one that didn't do any of the, bad stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because nearly all the other ones did,
I mean, you don't know what might come out, but hopefully not. But I mean, I'm all for that. I'm glad that these people are being outed, even though it's taken 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
I don't like sex offenders, and I hope they get what they deserve.
Yeah.
We didn't like them inside either, and we made that pretty clear a lot of times.
Yeah, I know they put them in a separate wing, don't they?
Well, they do, but this is what a lot of people don't understand, and why would they? They don't have to go on those protected places.
Is it called the numbers?
The numbers, Rule 43, the cucumbers.
Why do you call them the cucumbers?
It's rhyming slang, isn't it? But Rule 43.
I like that, the cucumbers.
VP unit.
But do you know what? Well, I'm actually going to, whenever I talk about nonsense now, I'm just going to call them cucumbers.
Yeah, just say, it's...
What does it rhyme with?
You're a bacon bonce if you're a nonce.
Bacon
but
bonce.
you're on the cucumbers, you're on the numbers, which means you're on Rule 43.
Do you know what? I didn't know any of this stuff today, so I've learnt about
Every
the cucumbers and the bacon,
day.
bacon bonce. Yeah.
Bacon bonce, yeah. And I mean, it's kind of died out a little bit in prison now because language has changed. But back in my first sentence, there were bacons on the cucumbers, and if you were doing 3 years, you were doing a carpet,
Right.
Because there was a time in prisons where if you had a sentence of 3 years or more, you were allowed to get a rug for your cell. This is going back a long time ago. So if he's doing 3 years, he'd be doing a carpet.
I always wondered who bought them fucking rugs when you drive down the road and there's them big signs saying massive rug sale.
Yeah,
and it was like, how many fucking every week you got a fucking rug sale? But it must have been going to the prisons.
But it's like that furniture place as well, isn't it? The sale never.
It's always a sale.
There's never a time when there isn't a sale.
Yeah. But Piers, I've really enjoyed having you on today, mate. I think we've had a great chat.
Thanks, Terry. I've enjoyed being here. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And where can people buy your book from?
So it's available on Amazon. If you just log on to your Amazon account and type my name in, Piers Ravenhill, or you can go the long route and type 9 million from privilege to prison. It will come up. The price of a paperback varies. Amazon do certain discounted deals, and you can also get it on Kindle, is it?
Right.
On ebook. The audio book has been an absolute disaster. The people that were supposed to be dealing with that for me basically just jogged me on, and but yeah, it's there, and I've had some good feedback. I mean, I would like people to be very honest with me, because I am with people. If I think you're an arsehole...
You've told everyone where they can find you now on TikTok, so they'll be on there. Drop you a message.
If you don't think it's any good, I appreciate the feedback, because it will make me try harder for the next one. But I feel like I've been lucky, Terry. I've had lots and lots of good feedback from it. So
yeah. And on TikTok, you're Piers Ravenhill as well.
I'm at 9,000,1717. I think if you type my name in, you'll find me.
9,000,1717.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the 9 million is the amount of minutes.
But 9 million, as in 9.
So it's a number 9 with million in letters.
Right,
there's no gap between them, there's no gap between 1717.
Got it.
And those are my 2 prison sentences. I just needed something, and that popped in my head. So
Brilliant. Well, I'll make sure if I'm not following you, I am, and we'll have to do a live.
Do you know what? If you get onto me for it, I'll do it.
No, we'll do it.
I'm green as hell, but I'll do it.
But Piers, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
It's been good, and I appreciate the invitation, Terry. Thank you.
It's so funny, like how small the world is.
Yeah,
the Budokan, Frimley, Stearns.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, our lives must have been like crisscrossing.
We must have somehow, years and years ago. I know. I used to pop my head into the Agincourt every now and then, and we've probably seen each other but never realised it.
But that's the mad thing about life, right? And then we get connected, sort of, 3 decades on.
It's mad, exactly that. Look, just very quickly, I had a knock. I was at my ex-girlfriend's house about 6 months ago.
Right.
There was a knock on the door. I've opened it. I'm there alone. There's a bloke standing there. He said, "You might think this is really weird, but I know you." I'm like, yeah. And now when he said that, I've just copped a little bit of his face. I'm thinking, He said, "You won't remember me. My name's Paul. We went to school together." I said, "I fucking remember you. I remember you very, very well. I remember everything about prep school."
Right.
I said, "How on earth did you find me?" He said, "I just was driving past. I'm not even from round here. I'm trying to find a mate's house.
Right.
I saw you. I thought, that's Piers." He'd seen my face on a boxing promotion poster in Woking about 12 years ago.
Right.
He clocked it, and now I see him every couple of weeks. We have a bit of breakfast together.
Wicked.
40 odd years I hadn't seen him for. And last weekend, a mutual friend who we were also at prep school with flew over from America. I hadn't seen him for about 30 years.
Right.
And we all sat and had breakfast together. It was brilliant. And it was one of those friendships. It was like we'd never been apart. So we chatted, and it was great.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I'm lucky like that.
Amazing. Well,
So
I'm sure when this goes out, lots of people will be hitting you up on TikTok and going, "Oh, do you remember me?" And you'll probably get
I mean, I do. I was doing a podcast actually with another chap called Marcus Fernandez about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I walked out of Holborn Tube Station. Someone called my name. I thought, oh, who's this? Someone from the past. Anyway, this guy bowls over with his mate. He said, oh, Piers, I follow you on YouTube. I was like, oh, that's great. Brilliant. Thanks for that. He was a friend of Kevin Lane's,
Right,
funny
Kevin,
enough.
Yeah.
So he told me about Kevin had just been recalled and da-da-da. And, I mean, things like that, it happens. I don't mind it at all. I wouldn't want to be famous where you can't walk down the street, but occasionally someone will.
I'll wait till this podcast comes out, mate.
That's what I've been told by you, Terry. So we'll see what happens. But yeah.
Amazing. So I'm just going to wrap this up. And I'm looking forward to reading your new book as well. But if you do come on and do a part 2, let's do it around the book, and then we can put the book there.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a schoolboy error. I even thought of it. I was up at 5
We'll put the link in, don't worry. We'll do it.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into the Criminal Connection podcast. Piers Ravenhill, what an amazing guest. Make sure you get his book, From Privilege to Prison. It's a great read. This episode was brought to you by our friends at Betovo. And make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you tell all your friends about us. And we will see you next week on the other side.